r/malicious compliance. First story. Landlord advertises all of our company's equipment for sale to our competitors. Best follow our eviction to the letter. Updated. TL. Doctor. Spoilers. Landlord gives us 7 days to vacate our leisure business from the building. He thinks we can't empty the business during lockdown and proceeds to advertise our equipment for sale to our competition. We sell everything in 7 days and destroy the rest. Enjoy no rent and the loss of your potential buyers. I work for a leisure company. Think soft play, indoor soccer, laser tag, can't be specific. Prior to lockdown, managers and the big bosses were negotiating the renewal of the lease on one of our parks. Things were going mostly smoothly, however, the landlords were difficult to contact. Then 2020's shit hit the fan. All of our sites were closed, and everything was thrown into a mess. Negotiations began to slip down the priority list. Nobody thought the landlord would push an eviction for an expired lease during this period, especially with it still getting rent, despite the site's closure and the closure of every business and restaurant in the immediate area. We were wrong. A few days ago we received a letter saying we had 7 days to leave the premises and take everything with us. We are reminded that anything left in the building after 7 days will become the landlord's property. That line is very important. Now a lot of construction goes into installing our equipment into a new building, which makes emptying one even harder. Add a lockdown, with no staff and most businesses shut, it meant that saving much of our assets would prove to be extremely difficult. To lose a profitable site and all of its assets is definitely a blow to our company. But here is where it gets worse. A few days into our 7-day eviction, we find out that the landlord has been advertising our park to our competitors. But he isn't offering just the building, he is offering all of our stuff pre-installed, ready to go, just needs rebranding. The landlord has evicted us from the property in an attempt to increase rent and make a solid profit from our equipment installed because he thinks we won't be able to empty the park. We were furious. And here is where the malicious compliance came in. We were told we had 7 days to move everything we owned out of the property, so that's what we did. Local businesses from all around offered up free space to store our things. A few people came back out of lockdown and they all spent the rest of the week removing, selling, or destroying everything that was related to us. We didn't even leave light fittings. In every other site vacation we have seen, we always end up leaving thousands of dollar sign worth of disco lights in the ceilings because they are too hard to get. We leave most the construction in, as well as things like the bars and kitchens that all stay intact, recognizable as what they once were, but not this building. We ripped up the flooring we installed, tore down the walls that were not part of the original structure, wooden walls to divide up the space, ripped apart our manager's offices, and removed all artwork and lockers. The landlord now has every new deal he has been making dead in the water, a large renovation bill to install new flooring, etc. Or a company willing to do it themselves like we were. Lockdown has been extended another 4 weeks, so he has at least another 4 weeks without rent we were paying and won't have any potential buyers. Silver lining, the assets we got out of the site, fridges, TVs, equipment, food, tables, have all been sold, and the lack of rent and additional income has helped the business and paid staff wages. Update. Hi everyone. I'm so sorry for how long an update has taken. I was waiting for things to unfold. Here is what happened next. We handed in the keys, and it was probably the quickest handover we've ever had. The landlord clearly didn't want to make any kind of conversation, and there was definitely an elephant in the room, but he definitely said nothing about the lack of our equipment. Complications did arise when we went to get back various deposits, but he had no case to withhold the deposits from us as the building was in excellent shape. We had conducted much of the maintenance work ourselves, so the building was in a significantly better condition than we found it. We also cleaned up 99% of the rubbish and dirt from our demolition crusade, so he couldn't bill us for cleaning. A very minor bit of pressing from our legal team meant that we received everything owed back in full. The building is still vacant, and as of yet we don't know of any potential buyers. At this moment in time our company is still standing despite the pandemic closures and lack of business. Staff are all still employed and doing well. A huge thanks again for everyone who took the time to read this, and to those who were dedicated enough to remind me for updates. Big shout out as well to the amazing people who gave awards. I really appreciate it, and I've been making sure to pass on the good karma. Second story. My neighbors wanted to call a professional to mark their property line. My parents agreed. This was a long time ago, but I remember it clearly. We moved into a community with tight space in between our house and our neighbors, and we didn't like them being able to see into our kitchen. We put up a bunch of plants, costing thousands, but my parents thought it would be worth it. A week later my parents awoke to the plants completely chopped down. My father was furious and marched down to our neighbor's house. He told my father the plants were on his property line, therefore he had total right to take them down. He warned that, if anything were to go on his property again, he would report us to the authorities immediately. Later that day my father called the company that put in the plants, and with a warranty we could have them replanted next week for no charge. We made sure there was no way it was on our neighbor's property. However, a few days later we caught him chopping them down at 2 AM. We called the police upon obstruction of property, and after a chat with my neighbor he decided to call a professional and mark his property line. My father agreed. A few days later I got home to find orange tape in my neighbor's yard. Apparently, his fence was 11 feet over our property line. We watched as he took down his fence, completely furious. Within the next month we were enjoying our new space and privacy in our backyard, and my neighbor ended up losing 1/4 of his backyard. My neighbor ended up having to pay almost 10k for the destruction of our property, and we got to plant our plants again. TL. Dr. My neighbor chopped down our plants because he claimed we were on his property. After calling a professional he lost 11 feet of his backyard and had to pay for destruction of property, and we got to keep our plants. Third story. I don't care if he is dead, put him on the phone. I was sent here on a recommendation from another sub with a story you guys might like. First time poster, on mobile, etc. TLDR at the bottom. My father died on Father's Day 2012. He was divorced and living alone, and I'm an only child. So that means that I had to wrap up all of his affairs. This story centers around us trying to get his utilities cancelled. I called in to see what we had to do to get them to cancel. The lady I spoke with on the phone said to send in his certified death certificate. I sent in the certified copy of his death certificate the next day. The next month got another bill. I called again, and a new woman answered. She said that, because I wasn't on the account, that she had to speak with the account holder. I informed her that the account holder was dead, but she wouldn't budge. I had to make an appointment with a supervisor, so she could speak to him herself in person. I showed up at the Board of Public Utilities with another death certificate, and his ashes in the clear bag that they returned his remains in. I plopped them down on the center of her desk and said when she talked to him to tell him that I loved him for me. The woman went pale, flew out her chair, and called the cops. When they showed up she claimed that I had assaulted her. And yes, my dad's remains were still sitting in the middle of her desk with the death certificate. The cops questioned me as to why I would do that. I told them the story. The supervisor's boss was called in, and they all stepped away from the desk for a private talk. While they were talking, the cops came over to talk to me. They said that I shouldn't take human remains out in public, but there was no laws that were broken. I said that I agreed with them that it was extreme, but she insisted to speak with him in person. By then they were done talking between themselves. The supervisor's boss kissed up to me and got it taken care of. But the story isn't over yet. I had to call back a few days later to get utilities back to the house in my name. When the person on the phone saw the address and my name, I was immediately put on hold. The supervisor's boss that finally helped me got on the phone. She sucked up to me and waived all of the fees that come with setting up utilities. Just as the call was ending, she informed me that she was again so sorry for the employee's lack of compassion. She said that the employee was terminated, and again she is so very sorry. TLDR, ignorant employee asked to speak to dead dad. Had a meeting in person, brought his ashes, got her fired. Edit, I can't believe this blew up. I'm so grateful for all of the love and support in this post. And for those who doubt the validity of the story, I hope when you are in my shoes and doing the same, that you have an easier time than I did. Fourth story. Security made us show the last 5 photos on our phone. My coworker, an absolute hero, maliciously complied at security on one of our subcontractor jobs. The customer was a manufacturer for high-end electronic components. Security was tight as a small 4-inch x 6-inch box could contain $250,000 worth of microchips. Our team was installing equipment in their facility for 1 week. A security checkpoint had to be passed every trip in or out of the building. Mr. Security Guard, Chad maybe, decided my coworker, Steve probably, was more suspicious than the other 4 techs. So every trip in or out, not only was Steve made to dump his entire contents of his backpack out on the table and go through it, Chad required Steve to show him the last 5 pictures taken on his phone to prove he wasn't stealing secrets. This is all fine, except Chad lets everyone else through without any sort of inspection. Steve is trying to stay positive, but obviously this is eating away at him. Steve tries to be overly positive and also a bit snarky with comments like "Thank you Paul Blart for keeping America safe," which busts up the rest of our crew. Then, Steve has the idea that will free him the rest of the week. Wednesday comes along. Steve is overly scrutinized on our way in as usual. As we head to security at lunch, Steve says he has to go to the bathroom. He comes back out a few minutes later, absolutely giddy. Chad Blart, mall cop, stops us on our way out and asks Steve to see his camera roll. Steve gladly hands the phone over. Chad is greeted by some very peculiarly angled shots of Steve's butthole. What the F? In area $. Chad throws the phone down on the table. "Oh, sorry. I thought I had a hemorrhoid and wanted to see how bad it was. Is everything okay with my pictures? Is the facility safe?" Chad never checked Steve's materials again. Good on you, Steve.